TCI is brought to you by Spendthrift's 3-time Grade 1 winner Golden Sense, Into Mischief's best son at stud. Look for his first crop at the upcoming 2-year-olds in training sales.
Welcome back to TCI, your inside track to the Triple Crown. Alongside Joel Cunningham, I'm John Siegel. Well, Joel, this is our 9th season, man, of following these 3-year-olds, and this is super exciting. I'm ready to jump in to 2018. You know, when we left our last show, we were talking about Bolt D'Oro and Good Magic, and who did we think was going to be the 2-year-old champion? Of course, that ends up being Good Magic. I want to look at the TCI top 10, though, and see where they line up and see if Good Magic ends up being in that TCI top 10 #1 spot. Let's jump in here and take a look, man.
You're going to see them 1-2, John. Now, this isn't really a result of their 2-year-old form or credentials. Remember, our top 10 is more a projection to the first Saturday in May, the classics, a mile and a quarter, those classic distances, John. So I'm less interested in some of that 2-year-old form. I mean, it's important to establish quality. Now, the good thing for both these colts, they both have a lot of stamina in their pedigrees. I like their styles. Obviously, we know what Sons of Curlin have done, made a huge impact on the Triple Crown Trail the last handful of years, John. So you have to respect those 2 horses. I just prefer Bolt D'Oro in terms of his overall quality. You know, I would have voted for him for champion 2-year-old. It's irrelevant now. I think his body of work shows that he was the most brilliant 2-year-old of his generation. He's have an AP Indy mare. I have no reservations at all about his ability to get a mile and a quarter. I love his style. He was the circumstance of, you know, he had some tough races and he drew so poorly, broke so poorly, and he was really outpositioned in the Breeders' Cup. And that really, take nothing away from Good Magic. He had better circumstances in terms of the trip there, and he won the right way. I mean, Good Magic's race was outstanding. I just think Bolt D'Oro, when you look at him across the board, his overall credentials and quality, in my opinion, the speed figures, I mean, the rag numbers, support that Bolt D'Oro is a faster horse. Now, obviously, they're going to develop. And it'll be interesting to see between these 2. Again, they've really started this rivalry now, and they have the upside to get better at 3 as the distances go on, as I mentioned. Be interesting to see how they both end up developing here and who winds up being better. I think Bolt D'Oro is a little better right now, so I'm going to have him in the 1 spot.
Well, it seems like Bolt D'Oro is a little bit out in front. They even know which race that they're pointing towards with him. Of course, that's the San Felipe. Good Magic's just starting to work back. So I do think he's actually a little bit further along. In my opinion, it seems like if you have your race picked out already and you're going to start your season a little bit early, what do you think about that?
Well, I think 2 published works here. Bullets, I think, down in Florida. You had 1 here. Now, he's sort of, remained in training, and he had a hind end issue that gave him a setback. They wanted to actually come back in maybe the 7/8 San Felipe, which might be a good thing they didn't make that race because Bob Baffert is a really good 3-year-old by the name of Zulfikar. I think it's going to be tough coming back in that race. But Bolt D'Oro, I like the fact that they will start him going back around 2 turns. He's had going to get a little more time training up to that race because of the setback he had. Good Magic, let's see where he ends up. I think it's still a little early for them to really commit to a spot yet with him. But again, just tremendous upside, great connections. You really can't knock either one of these horses. I mean, that Breeders' Cup Juvenile, these 2 horses coming out of it, it's sort of how I felt the year before, John. We had Not This Time and Classic Empire. I mean, both horses projected to be good 3-year-olds. Now, Not This Time wound up getting hurt, but he sort of had that Bolt D'Oro trip. If you remember, Not This Time was not the champion because he didn't have as good of a trip as Classic Empire. So, again, I'm very interested in this rivalry going forward this year.
All right, let's take a look here. I see number 3, a horse that is going to be in Louisiana. Won the LeCompte last time out. Looks like he's going to take that Louisiana route. We'll see him back in the Risen Star maybe next time out.
He won the LeCompte last time out, and I love the way he did it. I mean, he instantly looked like a Derby horse to me. That's why I have him in the top 3. I don't think he's as talented as 1 or 2, but I do think he has a high ceiling. I mean, he's a progressive sort. He's a son of Arch. Again, he looks like a classic type horse. It took him a while to break his maiden out there in California, but, he's not a, very quick horse. And again, he's a progressive sort. So he showed quality, I think, as a 2-year-old at sprint distances. But I mean, those California horses, John, they're just so fast and so early that it took him stretching out around 2 turns to break his maiden. And then you saw him come right back in that low South Futurity. And I thought he ran fantastic in there. I mean, basically it was a blanket finish, between he, McKenzie, and the Solomini, the horse that had all of the seasoning, was able to wear down on the outside. Now we know he got taken down, but I thought Solomini was the deserving winner in there. And then we know that they added blinkers to McKenzie and whatnot. But I just think, in still regard, getting away from those California tracks to a place like Fairgrounds, a long stretch, fair turns, really adhere to a style. The progressive colt's going to appreciate the distances as they stretch out. I like the field he beat in there, and I like the way he did it. To me, he has a lot of upside. That's why he's in the top 3.
All right, next horse is number 4, Sporting Chance. This is a horse we really liked as a 2-year-old. He looked like he was going to be one of the top 2-year-olds of his generation. Unfortunately, got hurt. How is he coming back? Does he look like he's the same horse?
He's working really well at Oaklawn. Now, I haven't seen a work, but I've looked at the times, and you hear the comments from D. Wayne Lucas. I know he's really high in this colt. I have him a little higher rated than most people because I'm like you, John. I've always liked the talent. And to me, when you look at the pedigree, he's a 2-turn horse. Now, he won the hopeful at 7/8 at Saratoga when he bolted there at the end and wound up getting injured, but he just is a very athletic-looking son of Tisnell. Love the pedigree. I think he's going to be a 2-turn horse. He has a ton of class. Speed is a weapon for him, but I think he has such an efficient way of going. I think he's going to carry that speed, John. I think he's going to actually be better around 2 turns as the distances stretch out. And he has some Churchill form, obviously, with the coach there running him first time out at Churchill. To me, he just has the look of a Derby horse, so he belongs in the top 5.
All right, and at number 5, you mentioned him already a little bit. Number 5, number 6. These 2 horses already have history just because, like you said, you know, number 6, Solomini, looked like he was going to win that race. He ends up getting taken down. Controversial call there. McKenzie ends up winning the race. These 2 seem like they already have a little bit of history going into the future here with some bad blood, maybe a little bit.
Well, it's both Bob Baffert, but that you look at the pairing, 5 and 6. I have them really close. You know, Solomini has more credentials right now. You know, if you look at his 2-year-old form. You know, the fact that he ran pretty well in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. He ran behind Bolt d'Oro, obviously. And then, you know, again, he beat McKenzie in the Low South Futurity, was taken down. We know what happened there. I thought he ran a better race than McKenzie. Now, he's a grinder, but he's a Curlin. So I expect him and his style to actually benefit as he gets to the classic distances, you know, later on in the spring of his 3-year-old year. So I think he's a very deserving horse in this picture. He's just not real brilliant. McKenzie's a more brilliant horse. I think Baffert likes him a touch better. You know, son of Street Sense, out of that good race mare runway model that Bernie Flint used to train down there at the fairgrounds. Always liked her. He has that good quality look about him. Be interested to see how far he wants to go. He's a more brilliant type, and he ran better with the blinker adjustment there. They tried blinkers with him, made another move coming out of that Low South Futurity, ran him right back in the sham, and he won like a good thing there. Now, he didn't beat a lot. Solomini coming out of the race had a little break, but he's still in training. Solomini, I still think is a horse that can make the Derby trail. He's just a grinding type. To me, you know, those horses do well in the Derby, but will he win the Derby with a race like with that sort of style? Maybe being a touch below talent-wise than the top horses in particular, but being a son of Curlin with that style, you know, he's a horse that you would certainly think is going to get some checks in these classic races this year.
All right, 7 and 8. We got, you know, 2 horses in here. I think both of them are running in the Holy Bull this weekend, maybe even our 9 horse there, Enticed.
You're right.
All 3 of these will be in the Holy Bull, so it'll be interesting to see. You're going to, you know, get tested right away, right off the bat, first weekend in. 7, 8, 9 going to compete against each other. Now,
remember, we're projecting. So the Holy Bull results bear nothing, in my opinion. Well, they bear something. They have to run a little bit in there. You just can't throw in a dud. But let's be honest, these horses that have won the Holy Bull, I mean, we've talked about it in years past.
Yeah.
You know, this early in the year, you know, you don't want to go over the top. You don't want to. We've seen that before. Horses like Cairo Prince and Mohayman, we've seen it time and time again. So when I look at Hollywood Star, he reminds me of looking at Lee from last year a little bit. He has Churchill form. He's a progressive sort. Here's the work in blinkers before the Breeders' Cup. He worked terrible that day. Absolutely no interest in the work. They pulled the blinkers off him. I thought he ran okay in the Breeders' Cup, considering, you know, they weren't backing up at that point. He was basically last and put in a little run here. He, again, is a big colt. I think he's progressive. He's that looking at Lee closer type that I think is just going to keep getting better. And then you look up once they go a mile and a half, mile and a quarter in April and May, and he could be your long shot to watch out for, in my opinion. When you look at the other 2 horses, Tis Mischief. That's another Dale Romans colt, like Hollywood Star is. Tis Mischief, another horse that's progressive, improved around 2 turns. The thing I like about him, John, I like his closing effort, was basically a winning effort. You see him Enticed here in the Kentucky Jockey Club Stakes. I thought that was a pretty good field. The thing I like about him is you watch him work. I mean, watching these works on XBTV down at Gulfstream, I mean, he is doing so well right now and working so fast. He does not look like a horse that has to come from the clouds like he had been doing it too. So we know these Into Mischiefs, they're all dead runners. I'm very interested to see if he can show a little bit more speed this weekend. In my opinion, the horse to beat in this weekend's Holy Bull is Tiz Mischief, just on the way that he's training into this race. But I'm interested to see if the way he trains, he looks a lot faster this year at 3. Will that translate into his style? Or will he fall out of the gate, suck back again, and have to make a closing run? Horses like that at Gulfstream do not fare well. But look, they're all that way. Hollywood Star, dead closer at Gulfstream. He's been a closer, but he's working fast. I think he'll be more tactical. Enticed, breaks from the rail. Joe Rosario's going to have to push him out of there. Here's a horse that's a big colt, high knee action. When I see him run, you immediately think turf horse. So the fact that he won at Churchill Downs, at clay base, you know, we see a lot of good horses that are like that, take to that surface. I wonder if he's going to like a tight track like Gulfstream. Particularly, he's not overly quick. You know, I think he'll be mid-pack in here. I could see him taking all the money in here and maybe being a touch vulnerable in here, John, in my opinion, at 1.16 miles. So it's very interesting because speed usually dominates at Gulfstream, and none of these 3 colts are that particularly quick if you look at their past performances.
All right, and at number 10, I know you've liked this colt. He's just a maiden winner, but he's back working again. Tell me, how's he doing?
I have to have him on the list, and if he didn't have a break in his work tab, he'd probably be number 1 for me. That's the reason I put him at number 10, because I just think he's that much of a talent. I loved his maiden race that much, and again, you know, you look at that pedigree, John, screams classics. He's a brilliant type horse that's going to make his own trips. Everybody that's ever been around the horse has raved about him. So I think a big future here, but obviously one work back. I mean, you start, you know, working the math in your mind and when he may be ready. Now, the good thing about Montauk is they've always said he comes into his own really quick. He puts a lot into his works and he comes to hand really quick. So I don't think they're going to have to put a ton into him to get him ready, but they're not going to run a short horse either. They're trying to protect his future as opposed to make the Derby. I think the more realistic plan for Montauk is maybe the Preakness if they can get a prep in, and maybe he's that Stradivarius type. Remember Stradivarius, another brilliant horse that was a latecomer. You know, had to win a maiden, or excuse me, an allowance race at Keeneland, and then parlayed that into the Preakness where, you know, he was up against it that day. But that's sort of, if I'm guessing, that may be the route that Montauk's on. But I'm gonna give him an opportunity because I think he's an elite talent that if by chance he comes to hand fast enough, you never know.
All right, well, let's start looking at some races that we know are going to happen this weekend. Let's start at Aqueduct. I think we got races at New York, California, and Florida. But let's start in Aqueduct. Tell me, who do you like in the Withers?
You know, John, I think this is a 2-horse race, and Ferenz Fire is not one of those horses. You know, I look at the pedigree. Poseidon's Warrior, again, that spikes down, that more one-turn type pedigree. When he went 2 turns in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, he threw in a clunker. Was beating 20 lengths that day, and I know it was a road trip for him. Maybe he could run better in here, but the fact that the Withers is no longer a mile or a 1.16 miles, it's a 1.1 miles, to me that hurts Ferenz Fire in my opinion, and it helps another horse, Marconi. You know, here's a horse that's owned by a lot of the same connections of last year's Belmont winner, Tappert. It's the Bridlewood Farm. Obviously the Coolmore connections are in on this particular colt. He's a half to mucho macho man. He's that kind of horse that he's been slow to come around, sort of like Tappert. Big Tappert colt. Not a ton of early speed. He's had gait problems. Tappert had gait problems too. So they're facing baby mental things with Marconi. How fast can he come to hand? He's trained up to this race, and he's a finisher. Todd's worked him with all of his best horses, and he works really well with a lot of Todd's best horses. So they think he has upside. The question is he going to be a Belmont Stakes horse, or can they actually have this horse come to hand in time to make him a Kentucky Derby colt? I do think he's a player in here because it's a 1.8 miles, but I still think the horse to beat without question is Avery Island, just because, again, speed, I think it's going to be so tough to catch at Aqueduct, quality speed like this. The seasoning he has, coming in, reportedly doing really well, obviously has Aqueduct form. I think he's going to be very tough in here to catch, but it would not surprise me that if Marconi came running late, I think he's the only horse that can get to Avery Island.
All right, let's go out to California then. Let's talk about, it's the Bob Lewis, right? It's running this weekend.
Bob Lewis, yes.
Tell me, who do you got in there?
You know, I didn't think it was a great field. Most of the top colts in California did not point for this race, John. So there are a couple closers in here that I give an outside look at, and that's Arikara from the rail. Dark Vader, I even think, has a long shot chance. And then, you know, another horse that really caught my eye was Inscom. Inscom's an interesting horse because, you know, they paid a lot of money for him off of a breeze on the dirt at Mid-Atlantic, $850,000. Now he's a half to Grade 1 winner on the turf, and they've been running him on the turf. They tried him on the dirt first time with blinkers. He ran terrible. I bet him that day because this horse actually used to work with Moonshine Memories, a multiple Grade 1 winning 2-year-old filly, and he would outwork her quite often. Now it's a colt against a filly, I get that, but I think this colt has some quality. I think just mentally he needed to come around. They're going back to the dirt now. I'm going to take a little bit of a upset play here with Inscom going back to the dirt, because I've seen him work on XBTV and he's worked extremely well in the dirt in the past. My problem with him is he comes from off the pace. And again, those other long shots I talked about, they come from off the pace. You usually don't want a horse coming from far back at Santa Anita, particularly in a race where I don't think there's a ton of speed in here. So Shiver Me Timbers should be a deserving favorite in here, in my opinion, even though I don't think he's the greatest horse. And then Peace is very interesting. Gets Mike Smith, blinkers on. You know, he's run very close to Shiver Me Timbers. I think Peace, if the blinkers help him, I think he could actually be your horse to beat in here. But I'm going to take a small price with Inscom.
All right, let's go to Gulfstream then, Joel. This race right here is loaded with horses, which it always is at Gulfstream. Feels like there's really good horses that you can look into this race. You just mentioned all the horses that are on the TCI top 10. Yeah. I just want to throw a few other ones out there. I remember Free Drop Billy. I remember whenever he won right before the Breeders' Cup, and everybody was saying, man, this is the horse to beat. They thought that he was a really good horse going into that race. It was disappointing in there. But I see a lot of good horses that are in this Holy Bull. But it is interesting. It does seem like there's a lot of sprinter type horses that end up in these first few preps at Gulfstream Park. Tell me, I know you already said, you know, Tiz Mischief was your horse in there, but what do you think of some of these other horses' chances in the Holy Bull?
Add Free Drop Billy in there with Enticed and those other horses I talked about. I mean, Tiz Mischief, Holy Star, horses that showed quality at 2, but are off the pace finishing type horses. Those horses typically do not run well at Gulfstream. So if you have a tactical edge, I think that's a big advantage at a place like Gulfstream Park, and that's why I think Tiz Mischief, again, the way he's working, he's showing more speed in the mornings. You know, he's showing early lick in his breezes. I think he's a horse that maybe if he's coming to his own, can maybe, if they push out of there, he can actually sit a more forward trip. I don't know if that's going to be the case or not. You look at his PPs, and boy, he sure looks like a closer, but the way he's working, I'm going to take a small shot there. But yeah, I mean, what's interesting about Free Drop Billy, that's the other Dale Romans. I mean, he's got a few of them now, all in this race. To me, I was always lukewarm on him. I never thought he would. I always liked Hollywood Story a little bit better. I like Tiz Mischief a little bit better, John. So, you know, to me, I look at some of his performance, like even the Breeders' Futurity when he won that day. I think 10 City was going to beat him that day until he broke down on the turn, and then really it left it open to not a very good race, in my opinion, once 10 City went down, unfortunately. So again, I question his quality a little bit, and I certainly question his style as a closer in this race. Your speed in here is going to be Master Manipulator. Not really thrilled about his quality, but again, if he gets out on a lone lead at Gulfstream, all bets are off. Bandito is going to show a little speed. Again, he's not a big quality horse in here. Then you got a couple long shot closers. Mississippi drawn far outside, $700,000 Pioneer, the Nile Colt. Again, lukewarm on him. Followed him through his maiden races. I've not thought he's been a real top shelf horse for Cassie, in my opinion, but he has some respectable numbers. His 88, 87 buyer coming in. The Noble Indy race, he got on that lead. Noble Indy went by him late last time out. Noble Indy looks like a pretty nice colt. I just don't know, especially drawing the 11 hole here, I don't know how good Mississippi is in here. I think others could run by him late, but he certainly will have a tactical advantage in here. So I'm going to give it to Tiz Mischief in a field that I think is wide open, no standout. I wish there was a good tactical horse in here because that's who I would gravitate to, and I'm hoping that horse will be Tiz Mischief.
All right, thank you, Joel. Thank you guys for watching. Hey, we're just getting started. I mean, this is just the beginning. Make sure you come back next week. We'll recap these races, and we'll see what happens to the TCI Top 10.